one too. All right, we have all of that. So, thank you guys for agreeing to interview with me. I appreciate that. As a clarification, this is for Teach for America staff to know more about Baker Ripley when we go into diversity conversations. I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions, but first, please introduce yourselves and what you do for Baker Ripley, how long you've been here, also like where are you from originally, all that jazz.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I'm Lourdes Rodriguez. I teach here. I teach 6th and 7th grade science. I've been teaching at Baker Ripley. This is my 3rd year here.
Hello. I'm Jessica Cooper. I am currently an academic dean here at Ripley House. I started off as an 8th grade English teacher, and I've been here also for 3 years.
And I'm Jaime Luna, and I am the Teacher Development Officer for Math and Science. This is year 3 for me, and I'm originally from California.
Okay, nice. So, how did Baker Ripley start? / do you know the origins of the organization as a whole?
Let me take that.
Yeah, you do.
So, about 110 years ago, the Baker family started settlement homes for the community here in the East End, and it was initially a place where people that were coming in out of the country could get a meal, could get a shower, could get English classes. And this was started because a lot of the women that were in this part of the community noticed that a lot of people didn't have access to certain services to kind of go about their day. And a lot of people that were coming into the country also didn't have the, equal access to all the opportunities that they had. So actually a group of women started getting people in the community together to facilitate homes, showers, services that the community needed. And as it kept growing, they started doing citizenship classes in English for the Hispanic community in this part of town. And if you fast forward to about 10 years ago, 2 charter schools kind of grew out of that. And we also have a few Head Start programs throughout the city.
So how is the Baker Ripley charter system different than other charter schools that are here in Houston?
I can do that one. I would say the biggest difference is that we operate under a community school model, which means that we, both of our charter schools are housed in partnership with the community center. And that means we also provide wraparound services to our students and their families. Our schools are places for our students to get what they need educationally, but also their families to have access to whether it be healthcare through Texas Children, mental health services, the Houston Food Bank. We have food pantries here, immigration services, lots and lots of things that come through here so that we can service the child and their family all at the same time. But people in the community are also welcome to get those services from the community center even if they don't have a student who's enrolled in the schools.
So great. Can you give more examples of the wraparound services that you guys provide?
So we have the after school program, which again is open to not just our students, but students from HIC or any other places around there. Immigration services on this campus happen once a week every Tuesday. The Paris Foundation provides mental health services to families and students. And so for families, it's separate, but they work in conjunction with our counselor to service the students who are in need of additional support through counseling. Texas Children has their own wing on our campus. I'm not 100% sure about the Baker Ripley campus where they are housed there. What else we got going on? What else we have? Over here, there's a lot of after school programs and classes for adults, so ESL classes, computer classes, things of that nature as well.
So, go ahead.
We have the senior. Yeah, we also have the senior center here.
Okay.
There's something else on my.
So one of the examples that Jessica provided about the Paris Foundation, so what we're able to do is the Paris Foundation provides counseling for students. So we provide the space so they don't have to pay rent, and then in return they give counseling services to the students. So that's one of the ways that we're able to do that. And Lourdes brought up the senior center. So we have, it's like 20, 25 seniors that come in the mornings.
Yeah, who are regulars. We have probably about 50 who are enrolled in the senior program,
Yeah.
but we have like around
So it's-
strong 25
yeah.
regulars.
So they're able to build community here, and two of the ways that, as a school, we're able to take advantage of that program is some of the middle schoolers have worked with them in the past to teach them how to use computer and how to surf the web. And then with kindergartners get time to go and like
They have a
talk,
walking
have like a
club.
cafe or walking club. So they're able to develop oral skills while our seniors feel like they also provide a service to the school.
That's so wonderful.
Okay, now I know how to do that. They play loteria, if you know what loteria is, it's like Mexican bingo.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
they did play
And they,
that.
like, play for prizes, and I always see them and I'm like, man, I wanna go in there. This is like the holidays except Wednesdays.
Yep.
I just think that's like the purest thing in the
Yeah.
world is when like seniors get together with children and
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, and it's super cool because I teach at the middle school, right? So like when we're here at the elementary school, we're walking outside, the seniors are like, "Hey, Jonathan," and like John will go talk. I'm like, "How do you know that?" But it's because they've worked with them in the past, and so there's this relationship that they've built with our kids, and it's really cool. I'm like, I'm glad you're not just a random stranger.
That is so great. So thinking about, I know that you used to be neighborhood centers and now it's officially Baker Ripley, and I'm wondering how that transition happened, and how you guys are feeling about it. Was there anything that actually changed, or was it just the name? Can you speak more to that transition?
So the name, so part of it is that as neighborhood centers evolved, there were so many services that were part of the organization that we no longer felt that neighborhood centers really captured what the organization did.
Yeah.
So now officially it's Baker Ripley, and then I guess like a subtitle is Community Developers. Because it's not just a place where you go, it's like the organization also provides services even when there's not a center in a certain neighborhood. So part of the name change was to honor the two families that started it, the Bakers and the Ripleys. We combined their name, and then we also combined with the Ripley Foundation. So officially, we now own the land that we sit in, versus before we were just leasing it from the foundation. As far as how I feel like the work is still similar,
Same, yep.
so.
Our day-to-day has not
Our
changed.
t-shirts are just different.
Our emails changed.
Yeah, so I will say it's been like, when talking about the organization, yeah, so Baker Ripley, people don't really know, so it's like formally neighborhood center, so we kind of have to, and so thinking about like the student factor was, I remember they like sent out a letter, like, we're having this name change, this is why, so they like informed families, and kids were like, oh my god, but I've gone to neighborhood centers my whole life. I was like, but it's still the same thing, it's just the name change. They're like, so that was an interesting thing that I didn't think about, is they felt this connection to the name, but I do see like why the name has changed and why that's important. It was just really interesting how.
I do think the way, well, I'm assuming a lot here, but I do think the way people in the community feel about it is probably different than the way we as employees feel about it. Only because I have heard older people say, where do you work? I was like, Baker Ripley, but it used to be called neighborhood centers. And they'll say, oh, 40 years ago, my family used to go there to get food after school, or we would go there for an after-school program. So I think there's like a certain branding, if you will, with the community that we probably don't feel the same way.
Okay. What do you think are the three biggest struggles that the students and communities, or students and families of this community face today? That's the first question. And how has Baker Ripley, the school, gone about addressing those struggles?
You want to choose one or three different ones?
Choose like, let's go
What's
three
the
different
conference?
ones.
Okay, so
Just,
okay.
yeah, okay, one, two,
You
three.
first.
All
You go
right.
first.
So in this specific community, I know a lot of the need from our families and people that I've seen around here is the immigration services. So a lot of our kids maybe have somebody in the family or know somebody who maybe is undocumented. And so that is a common thing that isn't necessarily talked about all the time. Like, you don't just go around advertising that, right? But this is a place that they can come to receive help on those services. I think that's pretty common around here.
I would say, I think about the kids on the charter school side. We kind of live in a world where college is seen as like the only next logical step, which can be a bit intimidating for some students, and then some families, especially having such a high population of either recent immigrants or parents who weren't necessarily educated through the United States system, and they're not as familiar with what that means. And so it can be a bit difficult to help your child navigate through this education system without really knowing, what the next steps are and how you should take them. In terms of what we're trying to do to help with that is we're working very hard on parent engagement and making things family friendly so that they understand what's next. And then also we try to present ourselves as we help students get what they need for whatever next step they want to take, and not just saying college is our only next pathway. And so trying to give, we say true choice is our North Star. That's like our tagline for the district. And what that choice means is that you want to go directly into a career. Does that mean you want to go to college? Do you want to go into the military? Letting them have those options and helping them feel comfortable and confident to walk into any of them.
I was going to use immigration as a possible. I have heard a few students talk about like possibly having to move, and so part of the second. So we sit in the East End, but like if we narrow it down, it's part of the second ward, and if we go closer to downtown, the city's gentrifying. So there have been some students who said we might have to move because the rent is getting more expensive. I think what's puts us in a weird situation is that we're also a charter school, so kids aren't necessarily zoned here, but I would say the majority of them live around here. So I don't know that we're necessarily doing anything to combat that, but I think it's going to be something that we're going to have to pay attention to see if in the next 5 years demographic shifts happen, and if that's going to affect how kids are able to get to the school.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you guys have heard that from my kids too. But.
There's lots of areas randomly gentrifying in Houston right now. I know I live in the Heights, like 24th and Shepherd, and that area is also gentrifying a lot. And it seems like everyone's just moving out. Oh, sorry. Hi. All right, next question. Is Baker Ripley going to become a high school eventually?
We don't know.
Oh, okay. What are your thoughts about that?
The school is definitely interested in being able to provide students with a quality education. Of course, part of that does mean 9th and 12th grade. As of right now, we're very focused on being very good at the pre-K through 8th grade side. We're working really hard on that, and so that is to be determined for right now.
I think a lot of parents have asked about it though, especially when kids are leaving 8th grade and in the process of applying to school, or parents get really nervous about it because many of our kids have been here since
kindergarten
or
pre-K.
Or like at least maybe 3rd grade. Most of them have just been together for so long, and it's a smaller like school, so everybody knows everybody. It's like a family kind of. And so parents ask about it all the time. I don't know, maybe one day.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a talk, but right now we're really focusing on getting really good at servicing these students and making sure the ones that we have in these grade levels, we're able to get them where they need to be and have them on grade level and able to compete with their peers.
So, thinking about curriculum, I know that you guys have a campus here and a campus in Gulfton. How is curriculum streamlined, if you will? Are teachers totally autonomous? Do you and Gulfton share resources? And also, that's my first question. And then also thinking about the Head Starts, is curriculum also very autonomous in Head Starts, or does everyone kind of share everything?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll let you talk about Head Start maybe a little bit more.
Well, so this is a little, I'm not as familiar with the Head Start. I think they use Frog Street. So we're a little funky, right? So we have Head Start. We also have one pre-K center that is under Promise Community Schools that we work directly with, but then we have a ton of Head Start campuses that we don't necessarily interact with. They have their own like set of leadership, even though they're under the larger umbrella of PCS. So I can't talk as much about that. Our pre-K, Fraga pre-K, they most follow the Frog Street curriculum, but we do have content days, which I'm assuming one of them we'll talk about in a second, where we do come together as a district and look at resources together to try to get on the same page about what the big buckets are for kids, what the main objectives are, and how they should be spaced out and paced. But then inside of their classrooms, they are able to do that. You know, it's like making a recipe, right? Like you do it your way, just these are the ingredients that, you know, you need to use for it.
I would say for K to 5 at both campuses, it's fairly aligned. So STEM scopes for science, for math it's Go Math, and for ELA it's Engage New York, which is aligned to Common Core, but teachers have to do some shifts for their classroom. That being said, they can still adjust to the needs of their classroom. So they're fairly autonomous. It's not mandated that they use it. So if I'm a 3rd grade math teacher, I could also use parts of Eureka or parts of Learn Zillion. But Go Math is like what dictates kind of what's taught when. And then Lourdes can talk about the middle school.
Yeah, so the middle school I would say is pretty autonomous.
The most
Yeah, we use a Summit Base Camp, so it's like 1-to-1, the kids all have their computers, and it's basically kids are like project based for the most part, or they're working on stuff individually. And then there is only like one 8th grade ELA teacher, there's not really anybody to plan with on the grade level, but we do work really closely together, so we're always just like thinking partners and thinking through things. But that's not, we follow the state objectives, but it looks different than, like we don't have like a scope and sequence we follow. It's kind of based off of Summit.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to explain how Summit works. Yeah.
Because it's paced by the student, not
Yeah.
the
Yes.
teacher.
Yeah, and so they go at their own pace and they keep track of everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long have you guys been 1-to-1?
This will be a 3rd year.
3rd year, yeah.
Using Summit only for 2 though.
Yeah, Summit we've been on, this is our 2nd year doing that.
And how's it going? I guess I'm wondering, I've never
Yeah.
been in a 1-to-1 space, and I'm just interested in how
It's definitely gotten a lot better. And I don't know if y'all been in classrooms, but like I know like 8th grade, they've done 1-to-1. This is their 3rd year doing it. Last year really struggled with the Summit platform. It's because it's a lot, like it's basically imagine like a line moving and kids have to keep up with the line, because if they don't, then their scores fall, right? And so last year they really struggled with that aspect of it and constantly playing catch up. This year, that's not really an issue because they kind of understand how it works, and most of them are there. There's probably 3 kids out of 70 who aren't. So it's like they're like learning how to self-manage. They're taking notes. They're like keeping track of themselves. It's really nice to see. So last year was a big struggle, but definitely improvement this year. And also for the teachers, most of us are back, so we know how to onboard kids. And 6th grade struggling, but it's expected. It's an entirely new way of learning. Because during our class time, it's not like the teacher's in front teaching the entire class like a traditional classroom. So we assign projects and they work through checkpoints until they finally get to their final product. And so it's a change, and we expect kids to struggle when they're first getting on it. But I think it's going well this year. It's improved for sure.
That is so great. That's kind of a segue into my next question. Over your time here, what is the biggest area of growth that you've seen this school have?
I can go first. I think kids are, this is all, as far as I know, this has always been a space where students were happy, right? We have really great kids. So they've always been very like well adjusted to that. But now we're matching that happiness with like ability and students being able to get what they actually need out of school. when I was an 8th grade teacher, my first year here, a lot of parents commented, a lot of students and parents commented that this is the first time that my grades actually match like what I should have in class. They had commented that sometimes in education, not all places, but sometimes in education, good behavior and being passive is seen as being a good student. And so you're not always really taking into account if students are actually meeting expectations and getting the objectives and learning what they need to learn. And so that is how we have so many students who are able to pass through and end up so far behind years ago, year after year, because they were just good in class, right? And so they didn't cause any problems, so they can pass. And that was something that a lot of our students struggled with that first year when we had a big change in terms of staff and leadership and really holding them accountable. And now I think they embrace that. So I think we got a lot of pushback that first year. A lot of parents don't understand. A lot of students like, what do you mean I got a C? Or, this, what do you mean I have to actually turn my work in order, to get this? I think now they're used to that. They expect it. And I'm happy to see students taking more ownership of that, and I'm glad that we're doing a service to them so now that they really know where they are and they know like where they need to grow, as opposed to, I'm quiet, I'm good in class, and so that means I know I'm going to go to the 3rd grade now. Does that make sense? Yeah. So.
I mean, I can just go off of that. I agree. When we first got here, it was like talking to the kids. Academics wasn't really that high on their list of priorities, so it was a lot of undoing with the kids that were still here. But I think now we've gotten to a point where kids are talking about academics and able to track themselves and know if they're doing well, and if they're not doing well, why they're not doing well, and steps they can take to improve that, and also why it's important. We talk about college a lot more, or alternative options, right? Like, the idea is that we're setting them up so that they can do whatever it is that they want to do after. So it's like, no matter what, you should be able to pass this test, because whatever you're doing, you're going to have to pass the test, right? So I think that that's getting a little clearer to the kids, and they can articulate that a little bit better. Whereas before, it just didn't seem, they were happy. They definitely were happy kids. You're like, whoa. But so the shift has turned a little more into academics and why that's important.
Cool. Like moving forward, what's an area that you think this school can still grow in?
I think I would say is providing opportunities for kids to excel outside of the classroom. Because we are small schools, and so it's harder to provide, like, we don't have a football team, we don't have extracurriculars for them, as many options because we're smaller. And so that's one of the things I know the kids really would like. And so many of them are on like the soccer team that the community center kind of heads, and it's good, it's great and everything, but there's kids who don't like soccer, right? And so providing more options for our different kids, I think, is something that we should push for, because they're like, can we please do this, can we do this? It's like, yeah. And we'll try it. But yeah.
So going back to their former answer about like how we've shifted in thinking about academics, I think that's going to be a long-term challenge that we face just moving forward. I would say the way we're seen in the eyes of the community is a community center first, and we just happen to have a school. And I think from my perspective, or my team's perspective, is we also want to be known as like a really high-quality school for people that live in this community. People come here every day to Texas Children's, or they come here every day to see the Paris Foundation, or they come visit the police officer that's in the storefront. They don't know that there's a school in the building. And I think the more that we, the better job that we do in educating kids, the more the word is going to get out, and I think that's going to be something that we have to constantly keep thinking about too. Because Baker Ripley will keep existing, right? But it's like, how good will our schools be? And I think we're getting to that point.
I would say as students become more academically engaged, making school a more friendly place for parents as well. I think that the more actively engaged parents can be, the more everyone knows kind of what's going on. And so that's something I would really like to see. We're working on parent engagement, not just, so now we have like student-led parent-teacher conferences in the middle school, so that it's a conversation between the student and the parent, and the teacher is kind of just there in the background to really show that it's a partnership across all. The parent is not separate from the school, and we really want to work to bring the parent in and feel a part of the education and feel okay asking questions and not waiting until something comes home. We want them to be like actively engaged throughout.
Thinking about like yourself as staff members here, what is your favorite thing about working for Baker Ripley?
I know, I'm like, how do I shuffle? Okay, go ahead.
I would say for me, because we are small, we get this opportunity. Sorry. Because we are small, we get the opportunity to be like big fish in a small pond, for lack of a better word. And Baker Ripley trusts us. They trust the people that they've hired to do their job. They let us innovate. That's probably my favorite thing, that I get to like try new things out. And if have proposals and say, what about this? They let us be really creative. Does everything work? No. But that's how you learn. And I'm grateful to be in a space where we have that autonomy and that creativity, because in some places, once it's been around for so long or it gets so large, you kind of just do what's always been done. And you don't really get the opportunity to innovate or respond to the needs of the students and or staff. And so that's something that I really enjoy about working here.
I don't know, this is hard to answer, because I feel like, yeah, so I agree with her, I second that. Also, I think it's just, I don't really know, I'm assuming that this came from like above, right, and like the hiring process and stuff, but I just think we have really good people that work here. People who all kind of have that same vision, right? Like our kids can do this stuff, and it's hard work, and we might walk around looking stressed, and we might complain sometimes, but overall, I think people are pretty happy, and I love that. I love people, so I love most of the people here, and it's just, that's not always true. Like I've worked in other schools where you're just like, everybody's miserable, and I definitely don't feel that here. So it's really nice. It's uplifting, and we support each other. So also, I think like admin and like central office, like, I don't know, I feel like we're all pretty supportive of each other. I don't know, it's probably my favorite thing.
I don't know, there are a lot of things that I like. So this is going to be a lot, so you could edit however. So I love saying that I work for a, whether you say community school, community-based school, community model school, and I say that because I feel very comfortable being me when I come to work, and I think our kids feel affirmed in who they are coming to school, and I love that, right? Like we try really hard to not be subtractive of the people that come into this building, and you know, when I talk to people, you know, say you work at a school, and I said, well, let me tell you, right? Like you don't know what our school offers or what our organization offers until you come into the building. And I love that because from the way that people who design the building, right? Like when you walk into our school, there are no gates, so it's like blended into the community. And when people come into our front of the building, they see murals, and they see an Aztec calendar, and they see colors, and they see people like greeting them. And I think if that's where you're starting, it's only going to get better as you meet the people that work here. And I love the way we think about how our schools work, and it's not just a building that houses kids and teachers throughout the day. Yeah.
Can you guys speak to staff retention over the past decade, I guess? Or however it's not the past decade, however far back you've been here.
So I would say about 3 years ago, at both campuses, we had about 85 to 90% of people leave or were let go. And that was a decision that was made by people at, Central Office of Neighborhoods, and before I even came in. So that was like a lot of the focus or a lot of the emphasis then was we're a community school, so we invite people in and we're really happy and we're a good place, but kids weren't doing well academically. So a lot of people either let go or chose to leave, and then from the last 3 years, I don't know the exact number.
I would say leadership-wise, for the last 3 years, I guess the central office, you guys have only added, right?
We've
It hasn't
added,
been
yeah.
any, so, because we need more people. We've added, here at Ripley, our leadership has grown by me. And then, but I was a teacher. So leadership has been probably about 80% retention. Over here, our Baker campus is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a turnaround in their leadership in the past year. And so both their school leader and their dean are both new. And their teachers with that transition also had a pretty steep transition. At Ripley, we probably like 80% retained, stayed. Our middle school, almost everyone. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everybody now has at least been here 2 years, except for
Kenneth
one.
was at it, he was going.
But he was already here. He was like an interdepartmental.
I mean, one
She's like, I just need an answer.
Right? We don't know.
Right.
We don't have facts
No,
and
she
figures.
didn't. So great.
One
great.
good figure is every core member that started 3 years ago,
Oh, so-
when we hired like everybody new, stayed on for their third year.
Oh, that's the truth.
Really? That's
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
So that is like one good figure that we can
Sure, I got
measure.
that.
Yeah. Our CSI was also the highest 2 years running
Oh, nice.
in the Houston region, if that matters anything to you. I think
He knows the facts.
I think if
Yeah.
but we haven't, I think one of the things that we've thought about is like teacher development while they're here. We haven't really, maybe we need to focus on that, is considered a retention a high metric for us, because we're also thinking of if we need to find someone else that's gonna like bring something that's really good to the school, then we're gonna prioritize that versus just retention. That's always been like the philosophy. But yeah, I don't have a number. We could get you a number. I
No,
guess.
it's fine.
I'm
I was
sure
just wondering
someone
if
knows, yeah.
As you just speak to it, it's fine.
Yeah,
It sounds like for the past 3 years it's been pretty consistent. And then something like there's kind of like an overturn.
It's the
if you
before
will,
and
like a
after.
takeover. Yeah. I think that my very last question, and this is one of the questions that I'm supposed to ask, but I feel like you guys have like already kind of spoken to it. We are talking about
Right.
like decentering white dominant culture as like a Teach for America region. That was our first diversity session with core members this past Saturday. And my question is, how has Baker Ripley worked against and for the oppressive systems that already exist? And if you guys would like me to like give examples, I would be more than welcome to do that.
so I can take a stab at it and then they can clean it up because they're probably better about this, right? So I think, so obviously what you're asking about is a systematic change, right? It's not on an individual basis. One of the, so we've tried multiple things at doing it through either individuals who work here or through teams. One example would be our ELA curriculum had changed the curriculum from last year to this year so that kids are reading books that are reflective of who they are in the classroom as much as we can, right? Knowing that at Ripley House, it's above 90% Latino Hispanic, and at Gulfton, it's a hodgepodge, right? So it's a lot of people from the Middle East, from Northern Africa, from Central America. We're trying to get kids to read books about backgrounds that reflect them, given that's still within the traditional charter school system, right? We, at our New Neighbor campus in the Gulfton area, allow time for prayer for our students who do observe Islam. So they don't have to necessarily acquiesce to the needs of like American school if they have other needs as well. Yeah, but from a systematic level, I think we're not always pushing college, because we believe that kids and their families have to decide what's in their best interest, so that's where True Choice came from our North Star. So we've decided that our goal is to prepare them for college if they want to do that, but if they want to pursue other options, that's up to them and their families to decide.
You said against and for, right?
Yes.
I would say on the against side, I think when you look at our staff, we have a very just like array, from leadership all the way down. What I've seen in some places is the teachers might be more diverse, but then the leadership all looks the same. Here we don't quite have that. On our campus in particular, our principal, Caucasian female, one dean is African American male, I'm African American, our other dean is Puerto Rican, right? On the other campus, both of Hispanic descent, right? Our superintendent, African American, so I think what I like about that is seeing it go all the way through instead of diversity, right, and then it stops. And I think that's great for our kids to see. I had a student of mine from my old campus. She came, she didn't know my principal was a woman, so I took her to meet her. And she didn't hear me say that was our principal, and she was like, the woman runs this? Okay. Like, I saw that light bulb in her head go off, like, oh, I could be a principal too. I don't think she ever considered that because she's only had male principals since she was a child. She was like, oh, all right. Like, she runs all of this? And then I told her, I said, guess what? So is our superintendent. And she just, what? Couldn't, believe that. Because at her school, her principal's a male, her school district, their superintendent and head of school, there are also men, right? And so that's really cool for our students to see at such young ages. I would say when we work for, it's not necessarily intentional. There are certain constraints that we all have, right? So all of our students must take a STAR test, period. 3rd through 8th grade, there's unless the parent is like, no, and they opt out. And so there are certain things that we do have to work within on a policy level, legality level. And one of our jobs is, yes, we're going to prepare you for this, but this is not the end all be all. And that's how we try to also work around it. So the STAR is not who you are, or this whatever test is not who you are. It doesn't mean this, but this is something that you will have to do because in life we all have to take tests sometimes, to get to certain levels. And that's not something that we have know about since we live in Texas. So that's what we're all doing right now.
I think that a lot of these structural things are so having leadership that does speak out about this, right? Whenever our superintendent comes and talks to us whenever there's an issue going on, right? Like a social issue, and we in turn really try to implement that stuff in our classroom, right? So so the middle school schedule has a team time scheduled out where we basically meet with our kids. We have circles, we have restorative justice circles, we talk about social issues. And so we bring up these topics, and so kids are able to open up and we get their perspectives and they debate with each other, and it provides an environment to where our kids and our schools are able to talk about these things, right? And so we're pushing for it. And I think right now I'm doing a book club with a group of kids, and every morning it's the best part of my day because we're reading this book that I'm trying to read books of people who people of color, right? And it's just so great because they're identifying with it so quickly, so easily, and it leads to discussing these topics that I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to do in any other school, right? And not saying it's not done, but I just know that I feel comfortable doing it. I know if somebody comes into my room, well, the kids might ask them to leave because nobody else can join unless, we all agree to it. But if they were to come in, I know that it would be okay. And they, people would want to be a part of it, right? And so, and other teachers are I want to do this, I want to do this book with them, how are you doing this? And so I've invited them to come in and see just kind of how the flow of it is. And so I think that having those changes systematically then leads to a trickle-down effect in the classrooms. Hopefully our kids can carry this stuff with them.
So great. What book are you reading? Just out of curiosity.
The Absolute True Diary of a Part-Time.
That is such a good book.
Yeah, it's so good.
Have you read The Hate You Give?
No.
That would also be a good
That's
one.
Really?
Book club.
Have you read it?
read that. This was on my list.
Yeah, should that be next on my?
It's be good.
It's
Yes, especially because
There's a movie coming
Did you say be good as in very
Be
good?
good.
Like, I was like, what?
It's also from the perspective of a female, so I think that might.
Oh, that's good.
It is good.
Wait, the hate.
The hate you give.
with like a U.
And the cover is a girl with a sign. Like, she has like a
Okay.
And
picket sign, I
there's
guess.
a movie coming out.
Oh.
Issa Rae is going to be in it.
So now that's it.
Who is she gonna be?
She's gonna be the activist lawyer.
This is gonna be amazing.
And Regina King.
Issa, that's
And
word.
this is
Should I order
this
these?
is also a debut novel. You should read it first.
It is really good.
Okay.
But yes, you should. It's also made for like a high school age,
Mhm.
but I think your kids could.
Well, yeah, I have the.
Your kids could read it.
So where do the middle schoolers go to high school? Like we're really big.
They apply to schools mostly around here, unless they like don't live here. But they go to East Early.
Austin.
Austin if
It's
they're
the
like the kids who
theater.
don't want to, but like few of them
Yeah.
go to Austin,
Eastwood.
Yes.
Eastwood.
That's Prep East End.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we have them apply
Yeah,
pretty early, like
yeah.
pretty soon. A lot of them will start applying. First deadline.
Do you think Baker Ripley's gonna open another campus? Like in another 5 years anytime soon?
So it used to be 3 campuses.
Oh, it
So it
did?
used to be the East End,
Oh, and
Gulfton,
Harvard.
and Sunnyside.
Uh-huh.
That was part of the reason for like the turnaround was they had to close down Sunnyside because it wasn't like meeting standard year after year after year, sadly.
Wow.
So that part of the charter closed down. So it's still a community center, but it's no longer a school. So I think when we all came, the goal was to hopefully build, or not build, but either get that one back and then maybe another one. I didn't know this, but it's really hard to add on to your charter. And since we were part of a turnaround project 2 years ago, it's even harder.
That's really interesting.
Is that where the kids go play soccer?
There's a field there, so it's possible. Yeah.
Do you guys have anything you want to add before I totally cut it off? No.
No, I should come visit.
Yeah. Visit.